Can two Mauses really deal 20,000 damage and pick up 13 kills between them? And can one Maus manage to deal over 13,000 damage but still lose and deal more damage than the entire team combined? Today's replays are going to showcase that. The first replay that we do have is played by CallMeXD, who is going to be playing on Siegfried line in quite possibly the best Maus gameplay I've seen in a long time, picking up an insane amount of damage as well as picking up nearly 14,000 block damage, as I'm sure you saw in the intro of this video. But hopefully this is going to give a good showcase of what the Maus can do even in today's meta where basically everyone just fires premium all of the time. So hopefully this will be good and interesting for you guys. And of course I'm really interested to see what you guys think about the Maus. Is it still competitive in your own eyes? Do you think it is as good as it once was, maybe back in the day when this thing could meet tier 6s, I believe, off the top of my head. But yeah, this is certainly an interesting tank, and it certainly, I guess, with the premium rounds of most tanks going higher and higher, with tier 8s having higher and higher penetration, maybe the armor model doesn't stand up anywhere near like it used to, but that doesn't really matter when you use the angling and of course side scraping, where even if you do have ridiculous penetration, you're just not exposing those weak points that something like the Maus has. And of course most people, they know about the key weak points: the big kind of curved turret, there's got the lower plate, and if you've got high enough penetration, even the upper plate can be a bit of a nuisance against some of the Jaegeroos and other vehicles that you might come up against. But that's where the angling of the tank armor comes into effect, and you're seeing it used quite well here. You see our player here, CallMeXD, actually getting into this position where the upper hull armor is actually really well angled. It's not only angled in the horizontal plane, but it's because he's kind of squidging himself up against the rock, he's able to then make the upper plate even more of a hard target to be able to pen, because it will just be a glancing blow. And that's really how already he's been able to pick up 3,000 block damage, and how pretty much he's holding up, what, like 6 tanks on the enemy team, a few of them being top tier. And that's really where this tank can be a real nuisance, is you can not only just hold up vehicles on the enemy team, but you can also plow rounds into them. As you see, 1800 damage done, nearly 3.5k damage blocked at this point. So what makes the Maus still dominant in this matchup? Well, because of the fact that this tank gets the smaller gun than something like an E100, where that gets the 15, this actually gets the 128 or the 12.8 centimeter, which allows it to deal damage more consistently. You're more accurate, you've got kind of better gun handling for the most part, and you can just sit in positions like this and just be a nuisance, even if the enemy team are deciding to fire HE, because they have no other option than to do that against you. You see, the Tortoise is just firing HE. I mean, I don't blame him when you're up against something like this, although for the most part, if you find yourself up against the Maus in a position like this, your best chance is to just leave, go away, and then try and outflank them later on in the game. But you're seeing here some nice use of the premium ammunition going straight through the Tortoise, no real worries there. But unfortunately, because the enemy team are firing so much HE, it's just taking out the driver, it's taking out the loader. You know, all of these things happen when people decide to start firing HE, which can be an absolute nuisance. But I digress. This game's been playing really well, and a lot of people will try and do something new, you know, try something completely out of the blue when it comes to playing things like the Maus. But in this sort of matchup, and when you're in this sort of position, there's no real reason for you to move. I mean, it's been working so well at this point that the tanks in front of you are maybe being a little bit of a bot. Maybe they're not the best, most aware players as to what they should be doing, but you know, it's not really working very well. Now, somehow the enemy AMX, I believe, actually penned the mantlet of this vehicle somehow, maybe, but either way, he's still managed to block 8,300 damage so far, and dealt 4,000 damage, having only received about 1,500 total, and of course been HE spammed by the Tortoise. So not a massive problem here, but now the enemy team are starting to realise, ooh, we've lost a ton of tanks to this Maus who's just been sat there, and the rest of the enemy team have been pushing around. Now you might be thinking, oh, this one Maus has been able to crush maybe like 4 or 5 tanks, just keep them occupied for ages and ages. Hopefully the team will have done something, but you'd be completely wrong. I mean, maybe you already realised this is World of Tanks, and trying to expect your team to do anything on this game is completely something you should never do. But unfortunately for him, his team is losing by over 3,000 hit points, and so it's now time for him to really start dealing something to the rest of the team. And talking about dealing damage to the rest of the team, the 140 gets set on fire. Lovely result, and picking up over 6,000 damage now. And a really nice start to the game. But don't worry, it doesn't stop here, as the Maus decides he's going in. And the first target is the AE Phase 1. And this is where that 12.8 centimeter, being able to deal this consistent damage, comes in really nicely against tanks like the AE Phase 1 that are just never going to be able to really bounce a shell off of the Maus, especially when he's firing the premium rounds, which you might not need all of the time, but they do have 311 pen, so for the most part you'll be able to pen pretty much everything you come up against if you do at least aim at the weak points of the vehicles and you kind of push forward and take things out as quickly as possible so they can't get multiple angles on you, and that's exactly what he does there up against the Object 705. But don't worry, even with the great use of the Maus, you're seeing that the enemy team have been crushing his team, and they're up by 5,000 damage. It's not looking good, since both the 60 TP on the enemy team, the Tiger 2, the VK, they're all on quite a substantial amount of hit points, and you're seeing him now actually deciding to push. And this is what a lot of the Maus players forget. They just sit there and they open themselves up to side shots, and luckily this Maus player does realise that the Tiger 1 is a bit of a pain, and with tanks like the Spatuk on your side, you've got to prioritise which tank you're going to angle against, and a lot of people always forget about this. Now the Tiger 2 on the enemy team does indeed get taken out by the WZ, so really big help from his team in terms of that. Maybe not so much on the actual damage, but you know, either way he's coming away with a decent amount of damage from them. The Spatuk on the enemy team, obviously pushing out against the Maus, not particularly the smartest idea, and of course not very smart when coming up against the WZ111 GFT, and of course he gets taken out for it. The K91 thinking, I'm going to be so much better than the Spatuk, I'm definitely going to be able to take out the Maus from full health. Obviously finding it a little bit difficult to somehow hit the biggest tank in the game pretty much, and of course gets taken out by the WZ again. So both the WZ and the Maus working really nicely together here, and hence why they've both been able to pick up over a decent chunk of damage, and actually between them been an absolute nuisance to the enemy team. I mean 12,000 block damage with nearly 11,000 actual damage is unbelievable. But it's at this point when the enemy team are just starting to compile together, when there are 6 vehicles on the enemy team ready to take out the Maus. There's only so many angles you can avoid being hit from, and you have to start removing the hit points off these vehicles, and he does that perfectly. One into the STRV, of course, prioritise the low hit point tanks, because even a small little pesky tier 8 vehicle getting behind you can pen you in the Maus, so making sure that you just remove the lower hit point vehicles if possible is going to yield you the best results in a tank like the Maus, and how you can come away with some really nice results. And he does manage to hit the 60 TP, of course, in the turret ring, easy kind of spot to be able to hit him with. For some unbeknownst reason, the batch at 12T is firing HE, which only the batch at 12T will ever be able to idealise, or at least give an opinion as to why he's firing HE. But it's seeming like the Maus could actually win this game, because they're all on the enemy team seem to just be bots. And you can see here, can he hit the bat chat? Oh no, absolutely fuming. The 60 TP comes around, which is not a tank that is fun to come up against, and with the Tortoise coming around, that really is not good at all. And the Tortoise seems to be firing the standard round, but still penning the Maus, of course, knowing where the weak points are. But even with a result where you manage to deal 13,000 damage and block 14,000 damage, so being an absolute sponge for the enemy team, and yeah, he still loses the game. So that genuinely comes down to the enemy team, and I guess that's the reason why he lost in this game. But yeah, certainly a brilliant result from the Maus. And of course, don't forget, check out this next replay, which is just as good and just as exciting as this one, but maybe with a better result. So what is better than having one Maus? Well, it's of course having two of them, and when they platoon up in a fashion like this, we're going to see some insane results. And unfortunately, they did decide to actually camp at the back of the game in El Haluf in the hopes that the enemy team will ruffle stomp their team. And yes, this is absolutely toxic, and I would never recommend anyone to ever do this, but at least we get to see the result of it, and hopefully you guys can, I guess, understand that these players are wanting to get ridiculous amounts of damage by hoping that their team fail and then they push forward and take out the rest of the enemy team. But I digress. What you're seeing here is two Maus camping in the base in El Haluf, and it's going to work. I'm going to give you that for free. This is going to work really, really ridiculously, and you're seeing here them using the hill area. The players in question are Dark Ninja and Feifei731, who are going to be using the Maus in this game. And the person that we are watching is Feifei731, who has the better of the two results, but yeah, still ridiculous. Now, the friendly team, they are down by 7,000 damage, and with 7,000 damage down and pretty much half of the team taken out, as well as the fact that the enemy team have only lost one tank, yeah, this is going to be an interesting way to fight an uphill battle at this point in the game, and they're down now by 8,000 damage on their side. Now, the first round actually bounces, and he's now in a case where they really do need to actually start doing something, otherwise the enemy team are just going to ruffle stomp them regardless. And the first round goes in for Feifei, and he managed to take out the VZ55, I believe, on the enemy team. Now then, the enemies, like the Object 268 version 4, deciding to YOLO the Jagdtiger, but unfortunately for him, he didn't take into account that the two Mauses are going to be sat here farming him in the side, and for some reason the Type 5 Heavy does the exact same. And this is where that 12.8cm is coming into effect really, really well, and where fighting a Maus up a hill is actually really, really annoying, because the point is that if you can hide the lower plate using this ridge over here, then you've only got to shoot the turret, and if the turret is being angled in the most optimal way, where maybe they're seeing this point, it's going to be very difficult for them to reliably pen the Maus. Now, people with very high penetration will be able to do that, but an enemy Maus with 311 pen maximum on the APCR rounds and the Type 4 Heavy, there's probably nowhere near enough to be able to reliably go through. It's going to find it difficult. Unfortunately for the enemy AMX, he gets taken out in the with a nice pre-aim shot there. And it's a case of farming down the rest of the team. Now, they are down by 8,000 hit points still, but they're starting to claw it back. I can't recommend anyone should ever do this, because it is, as I say, supremely toxic and disgusting really, when you think about it. Is literally letting your team die so you can hopefully be able to win with just two of you against an infinite number. But yeah, it does make for the spectacle, and that's what we're all here for anyway, so we might as well take advantage of it. Now, the Maus on the enemy team obviously fighting a bit more of an uphill battle than the Maus here, and that's because all of his tank is exposed. He's driving straight towards the enemy Maus, Feifei, and now it's a case of, like, his armor is just not very effective, whereas Feifei is using the angling and everything to be able to plow rounds into him, even if they don't manage to actually pen. Now, the Type 4 on the enemy team isn't a complete bot. At least he decided to move round so that the Maus can actually not actually hit him as he's kind of progressing forward. The enemy Maus, on the other hand, did not make that choice, and he suffered massively for that. Now, they are starting to get closer to the point where they may be able to hit that lower plate, but what you might have seen is that the AMX is actually providing some cover to the lower plate, which is lovely. There's an E75 in the back somewhere over here. There's the Type 4 who's deciding he's going to come around the side of the Maus, and hopefully this round will hit. And it does. Lovely. Now it's time to focus on the Type 4 Heavy, who's now come around, and the friendly Maus on his team is actually going to be pushed from the left hand side, so they are now up against it, up against the map border with very little chance of really being able to run away. And I mean, with the Maus anyway, you're not running anywhere very quickly, so hopefully this shell lands in the Type 5, and it does. Uh-oh. The enemy Minotauro and the M48-6 pattern, I just don't think they quite estimated the Maus and its capabilities when it is cornered up against these sorts of vehicles. And yes, the M46 pattern is in a very precarious position where he's got two Mauses farming him for every single shot that he deals, and a lovely round there into the back of the tracks, locking him down, and there you go. Juicy targets all farmed up by the Maus, and over nearly 8,000 damage, over 8,000 block damage, so 16,000 combined kind of blocked and damage actual done. And a lovely round resetting the cap, who is the Yag Tiger, who's probably the most sensible on the enemy team, rather than trying to YOLO Mauses. So yeah, they probably would have won if they all just got into the cap circle, to the point where the Maus would have just had to overexpose themselves and they all could have shot at them from range. But you know, people do what they do, and on World of Tanks you can't really logic anything because people just don't use logic. But there you go. So between them, they've managed to farm out nearly, what, like half of the enemy team. I mean, the singular player, they've picked up 11 kills between them, and there are 2 tanks left on the enemy team as well, which is of course this E75 and the final tank, the UDES-16, the tier 9 Swedish medium tank. So both of them quite capable in their own right, in terms of the E75 being a pretty solid vehicle, but it's still very pale in comparison to this vehicle, the Maus, because the armor on the Maus is just way better, and yeah, they're just not going to be able to compete with the DPM that the Maus offers. He locks his tracks down, leaving him side on to the other Maus. Very good synergy between both of them, knowing when to help each other out. And you can see here another round into the E75, finishing him off, and there's just one vehicle left alive, and this is, I'm actually astonished that this was even possible, let alone the fact that they actually pulled it off with not actually taking that much damage between them. I mean, the other Maus here in Dark Ninja took significantly more damage, over 2,000, well, nearly 3 and a bit thousand from the enemy team, whereas our player here, Feifei, has only taken 1,400. I believe that they are both, well, the enemy, Dark Ninja is using the boost to the HP pool that you can get with the Maus, since he's got 3,550, so he must have the field mods, I'm guessing, as well as the fact of having the equipment, whereas Feifei here is probably only using the field mods, or vice versa, using the equipment. So you can see here 11,000 combined damage in terms of assistance and actual damage, and of course 10,000 block damage. So I'm sure if you were in this sort of matchup, you'd be very, very happy with how it's gone, and you'd probably be pissing yourself with laughter, having seen what you've just done to the enemy team. It made them cack their pants and run for the hills like this UDES-16 has actually done. And I'm not surprised. I probably would have jumped in the water if I'd seen my entire team YOLO Mauses and still not even take off like 50% of the hit points between them. The UDES does indeed get spotted. He's got his ass out, and a round straight into the backside of the UDES finishes off or shaves off half of his hit points pretty much, and he's running for the hills, but it isn't going to be enough as the 2 Mauses are slowly crawling their way towards the UDES. And this is really where the Maus is unstoppable. And even in this sort of matchup, you know, when you know the angles and the positions where you can use the Maus, it can be super dominant. You're seeing now that they are both shooting at the UDES. Obviously, the opposite number Maus, maybe he's running low on rounds, or maybe he's just got an infinite amount of HE in his vehicle. But yeah, he is actually firing HE. Maybe he was trying to soften the blow. So when Feifei here does decide to come from behind, he's going to be on enough hit points to take him out. Lovely work from both the Mauses, and I am absolutely astounded by how the enemy team managed to throw all of their vehicles against 2 Mouses and still not be able to win. This is definitely a toxic game. I do not condone it. I think it's very, very disgusting, but at the same time, the result was equally as disgusting from both the enemy team and, of course, these Mouses. And, of course, we'll check out the post-game stats of both the first and second game, and hopefully you'll enjoy. So, Call Me XD, coming off the back of the loss, still managed to pick up the Mastery Badge, Bruiser, Duelist, Fire for Effect, High Caliber and Top Gun, and of course picked up 324,000 silver, 2,378 experience, picked up 1,026 base experience for the loss, even though picking up 7 kills and 13,000 damage, meaning that he nearly came top on experience, even for the loss within World of Tanks, which shows you how good of a game that this was. He managed to pick up 82,000 silver as profit, even having spent 187,000 on ammunition. He of course came top on the team. There is absolutely no surprise. He probably did more damage. In fact, you can definitely say he did more damage than the entire team combined. So a Mouse doing that is a hell of a result anyway. But yeah, not only dealing the damage, but also blocking 14,000 damage is an insane result, and unfortunately doesn't come away with a win, but it was an insane result. Thank you, Call Me XD, for uploading it to the What Replay site, but let's see what the 2 Mouses managed to deal in their result too. Now then, whether these players deserved to get the medals that they ended up with, even though there were a ton of them, and it was a brilliant result played very well by both of them, they managed to pick up a Mastery Badge, Hand of God, Spotter, Bruiser, Fire for Effect, Shellproof, Duelist, Radley Walters Medal for picking up 8 kills minimum, Crucial Contribution for picking up 12 of the enemy team, a Defender Medal for resetting the cap, a Brothers in Arms for picking up 3 kills each, a Cool Headed, a High Caliber, Steel Wall and a Top Gun, and of course picking up 268,000 credits with 4,376 experience. Of course, both Mouses coming at top and picking up over 20,000 damage between the 2 Mouses. So 20,000 damage in 2 Mouses. That is unbelievable. Of course, Feifei having the better of the 2 games, having picked up 9 kills, picking up 11,400 damage, and of course managing to block 10,000 damage in the game as well. The Dark Ninja managing to deal 8,850 damage, not blocking as much, but still 8,490 block damage, and yes, a 4 kills, 1,300 base experience, and for the result they managed to pick up 72,000 silver in total. Obviously managing to deal the same amount of damage, if not more, than the entire team combined on each one of the Mouses, so either one of them dealt more damage than the whole team combined, but there's no surprise when you leave your team high and dry with the 2 out of the 4 tier 10s in the game, or 5 tier 10s or whatever it might be, when you just leave them high and dry on El Haluf and there's no one fighting that corner area. So I just don't like to see this in the game, but at least we got to see it on the replay site, and hopefully you guys don't do the same, even though this one worked. But yeah, a very, very unique situation and a ridiculous game from both of them, picking up 20k combined damage between them. And thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, if you want to see more content from this channel, then make sure to subscribe, and also leave a like if you did enjoy this video, as it massively helps out the channel. And we're hoping to grow to 2,000 subs, hopefully within the next few months or couple of months. I don't even know. Hopefully you guys are smashing it, and of course, yeah, I'm really enjoying making the content, and hopefully you do enjoy watching. Of course, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. If I missed out anything, also leave that in the comment section down below. But if you want to see another unbelievable result as well, then I highly recommend you have a look at this video on the screen right now, as it is an insane result playing in the Object 907. Thank you very much, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.